Hey, how you doing? This is A Talking Dude. Thank you for watching and do subscribe to this channel. As you know, this channel is all about or focused a lot on individual personal liberty and responsibility. I think that we as individuals have got to take responsibility for our own lives. I think that government, we shouldn't be looking to government to solve all of our problems, although I do think that we should be engaged in the political process. I think particularly when it comes to the black community, when it comes to black public figures, too much of the time there's a focus on the government, on the system, on white people, on racism, and nowhere near enough focus on black people taking responsibility, on the black men and women sorting out our issues internally between each other, raising our children, and so on and so forth. So I was delighted, in fact, to see an interview with the UK Grime artist Stormzy on Channel 4 a few days ago. Stormzy, I think he's gone to #1 with his album, his hot property right about now. And in this interview, the woman tried to get him a few times actually, to talk about racism and how unfair the system is and all this sort of stuff. But he kept on coming back with his message of basically individualism and of taking responsibility. So let me play the first question, and I'll come back to you in a second. Let's just check this out right here.
But you know what they'll say to that? They'll say, yeah, but Ed Sheeran's a young white man, we're young black men. What are the difficulties and pressures on young black men in 2017 in the UK?
I don't think much has changed from the difficulties and pressures we've been dealing with since I wasn't even alive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think much has changed in that sense, but I feel like it's now the time to stop looking at like politicians or the world to help us. Nah, it's like, no, we are intelligent, we are ambitious, we're incredible, we're amazing, we're all these things, so we can just do it, man.
That could just be me. You'd think that I wrote that for him to say, because that's exactly what I am all about. That's exactly what A Talking Dude is all about. Stop blaming politicians. Stop looking to politicians, to solve any problems that we might have. For decades, the black community in the UK as a whole has been dominated, as I said, by a paradigm that focuses on racism and on injustice as the sole explanation, but for our relative underdevelopment. But what Stormzy does here is that he focuses on our personal, individual ability to respond, i.e. our responsibility. And I know a lot of people hate to hear this kind of thing. I get it all the time. I talk to family members, I talk to friends, I talk to people, other black people in particular, and as I'm saying those things, I can see them just saying, nah, man, you're nah, come on, because it's so radically different from what we're used to thinking and hearing and talking about as black people on the whole. In the next segment, what you'll see is that the interviewer kind of ignores what he just says. She doesn't go into any of that stuff to do with personal responsibility and, kicking forward as far as we can, as much as we can. Instead, she kind of just tries to pull him back to, oh, well, what about the institutional hindrances that are holding people back? And he gives a really good answer to that as well, and a really interesting answer to that. So let's just check this out again.
Yeah.
Is it race, do you think, or is it class? Because white young working class boys are failing in education as well. Do you think the system's failing everyone?
I feel like the system was always created the system that's in place now wasn't created to serve all. That just in terms of like the actual logistics, and when you add it up and you look at it's not made to service everyone. So just don't look to that system for it to service you. If you feel like you're from like a group or a minority or a background or a culture or a faith that feels like you've been ostracized, that's what I'm saying. My message is, do not look there for redemption. Like, it's within yourself. Like, you can, like, we've got this. Do you know what I mean?
So, wowzers. Okay, this is a really interesting answer. It's a very mature answer, and it's a very mature and powerful mentality. What he's saying is basically this. This is my interpretation of that. the system that we live in is not one in which every single person can have the same outcomes, and that those outcomes be extremely high, and not everyone can be super wealthy, not everybody can succeed educationally, not everybody can get the best jobs, the best cars, the best, I mean, just on a simple stupid level, not everyone can get the beautiful woman, and not every woman can get the hot dude. You know, it's just not going to happen. There's scarcity. We're all unique, we're all different, you know, and as a result of that, we're going to have different kind of constraints on what we can and can't achieve. Now, in other parts of the interview, he does talk about how, you know, we've got aim high and so forth, but I think the logical conclusion of of his mentality, of what he's saying, is that, okay, yes, we dig deep within us to get what's in there, but you know, we've all got unique gifts and talents, and it's up to us to do the best that we can do with those gifts and with those talents. Now, this is a very motivational speaker kind of thing to say. Motivational speakers often give the impression that everyone can achieve whatever they want to achieve, but no, actually, that's not the case. We can achieve what we're capable of achieving. Basically, not everyone can be a number one, you know, album selling artist like Stormzy. Not everyone can be a Premier League baller like Rio Ferdinand. Not everyone can be the Prime Minister like Theresa May. You know, again, people don't like to hear this because I think there's this feeling that everyone should have the same, and the only reason why everyone doesn't have the same is because of evil people and wrongdoing and wickedness. But no, it's just not possible for everybody to have the same unless you level downwards. So you can make sure that everybody has the same if the same is just the bare minimum that is very easy for everybody to have. And of course you can prevent other people from ever rising above everybody else. You can go for that kind of, you know, harsh, brutal kind of communism if you want, but you know, nobody really wants that. And I think particularly in the black community, we need to get real and get serious about this kind of mentality. To kind of, I wasn't going to say this, but you know, black people generally tend to lean toward left-wing politics here in the UK, but I think we need to follow the Indians. The Indians, I believe now, either mainly vote for the Conservatives, they're mainly kind of moving toward the right, or they're on their way there. And I think we need to head toward there, because that kind of mentality that's all about, no, let's share everybody's resources and, you know, social injustice and all that is not getting us anywhere. And going back to what Stormzy said earlier, he said that not much has changed for black people since he's been alive, over the last 25 years, 30 years and so forth. And in many ways he's right, but I see that as a indictment, as a damning indictment on all of these so-called social justice campaigners and politicians, from Diane Abbott all the way up to Jeremy Corbyn, to, you know, all of these groups, all of these community groups and revolutionaries and so forth. They've done nothing for for black people, and it's time, you know, we tried something different. So that's the first thing that stood out for me for this interview. Now, the second thing that stood out for me in this interview is what has probably caught a lot of people's eyes, and that's Stormzy talks about his experience with depression. And this is an area, you know, I've made a video about this previously, about mental health, black mental health. This is an area that I wish more black people would speak about. So let me just play you a little segment here where he talks about why he decided to talk about this in his album.
This is what I dealt with. So if there's anyone listening who thinks, raw, swear down, like Stormzy feels like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I always like, I feel I always come across confidently and happy, and I've always made sure that, like, I don't promote negative, like, and I just present myself in a positive way so I can spread that. So people will be looking at me thinking, I don't go through nothing. So for me to just let people know, no, I do go through that. I thought that was important, like, for people to know that it's not that you're weak and that you can't handle life, or it's nothing to do with that. Sometimes you're stuck and life does that, and it happens, you know what I mean? So I thought, let me let the world know that, let me do my bit of, like, but it was very difficult, but we got it out in the album.
So big ups to him, massive respect to him again. You know, it's really good for me to hear more and more black men, high profile, or black men with a bit of a profile, starting to come out and to talk about these things. You know, there was the Young Black and Going Crazy documentary on BBC a few weeks ago where the guy talked about these things, and now Stormzy's talked about it. Now, interestingly, I looked at the actual song lyrics that are in question. It's a song called Lay Me Bare, and I'm going to put the lyrics on screen here. Hope this isn't, breaking some sort of copyright or whatever, but it's really worth looking into it. I haven't listened to the actual song itself, but reading the lyrics, a couple of things really stand out to me. First of all, the song's called, as I say, Lay Me Bare. First of all, a couple of sections of the song, he talks about how he would smoke weed to take away the pain, basically. I can't. You can see it yourself there. There's lyrics in there somewhere where he talks about, I smoke a spliff to take away the pain. Now, for me, this is something that we need to talk about in the black community. I've made a video again talking about depression, mental illness in the black community, and talking about how it's connected, I think, to the use of weed, smoking weed, cannabis, marijuana, and so on and so on. I think this is an area that black men in particular need to talk about, because I think we need to stay away from weed. Black men need to stay away from weed. As long as we're predominantly living in the circumstances that we're living in these inner city areas, in London and Birmingham and, Leeds, Manchester and so on, we know that we're surrounded by these pressures coming through the kind of, the necessity to always be on guard and to keep your street cred high, and, the risk of being attacked and so on. All of these pressures are gonna put a strain on our mental health as it is anyway. We do not want to exacerbate that with weed. Weed exacerbates mental health problems rather than actually helping us to deal with those mental health problems, in my opinion. So that's one thing that, reading between the lines of the song, we need. I'm glad again this has come out so that we can kind of talk about it. And the second thing that comes out from looking at the song lyrics is where he talks about his dad, and this is where it's really it's harsh. It's hard. It's really. I mean, the lyrics are here. Look, it says like, bro, I can't believe I saw my dad still up in the ends driving cabs. He said, yo son, I need a car. I kissed my teeth and turned my back. Like, nigga, you ain't seen my face for years, and it goes on and so forth. And again, this is a subject that I talk about all the time. Broken families. I talk about how the majority of black children now, the overwhelming majority of black children actually, in the case of black Caribbean children, are being raised by single mothers. And in this song, Stormzy's basically telling us how not having his father around has damaged him severely, and he's put it in this song talking about his depression and his mental illness that he's gone through. Now, again, this isn't a popular subject because obviously there's a lot of people probably even listening to this who are raised in a single parent family or who are single parents. And I know that, it's not always fully in people's control that, what happens, but I'm afraid until we as a community, black people in the UK and in the US from what I understand, until we deal with this problem of dysfunction right at the heart of the community, which is in the family. The family is the heart of any community. Any community in which families are not strong cannot ever be strong. Until we deal with that issue, we're going to have the dysfunction and the violence and the mental illness and the so forth and so on. So again, I'm glad that Stormzy kind of put that in the song for us to talk about. Overall, I've got a lot of respect for Stormzy for talking as he has done in this interview, and I wish him all the best with his album. And again, I'm not a big fan of his music particularly. I like one or two of his songs, but I'm just really pleased to see a young black man refusing to blame the system for the problems black people face, and I hope that this will encourage more and more black people to do likewise. Thank you very much for watching. This has been A Talking Dude. Let me know your thoughts. Like the video if you like it. Share it if you want to share it. Take care. Subscribe again to A Talking Dude, and I'll see you soon.